Well, now we are going to move to our next presentation of the afternoon. So, Tameka, can you turn your camera on and say hello?
Hello.
Well, we are so excited to have you here with us today. So, could you please pull your slides up?
Yes, I will. Can you see my
That
screen?
looks fantastic. That looks great. The floor is all yours. Take it away.
All right, thank you. Okay, so the art of networking and building a meaningful professional relationship. So first, let me tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Tameka Hall. I am the Vice President of Enterprise Risk Management and Internal Audit for a financial services company called Kapitus here in Northern Virginia. I'm originally from New Jersey, born and raised. I graduated from Rutgers University with a bachelor's degree in economics before I relocated to the DC area in 2008. I also recently graduated from the Wharton School MBA program for executives with a double focus in finance and management. So when I first moved to the DC area, I um, encountered what most people probably encounter as a young unemployed 20 something is that people always told me it's not what you know, it's who you know. And I remember feeling incredibly frustrated by that statement because I didn't know anyone. And so this is a framework that I would give to myself at that age or to anyone who really wants to build an authentic network, because authentic network building is something that can be done at any level. I think it was Raina who talked about in the last panel about building relationships with change makers and those who make decisions, and using these pillars and building this, authentic connection is how you do those things. So I'll talk about the format of the presentation first before I jump in, and then we can start. I'll talk about each pillar first briefly. I'll give you a common pitfall of that pillar, and then some generic advice to get over that pitfall. For visual interest, and because I'm a recent MBA grad, I of course had to use AI for my presentation. And so I used AI to generate an image based on that pitfall. And so that's the image you'll see in the corner. So if it doesn't make sense, you can blame the large language model that I used to create the image. So pillar number one is be genuine. And I want to take the time to tell the differentiation between being authentic and being genuine. For a long period of time, I feel like there was this movement to bring your authentic self to the workplace. And I know for me, that didn't really resonate. My authentic self is naturally introverted. And whenever I say that, people kind of make a face. But just know that if you ever meet me in person, you are meeting my extroverted representative. Extroversion is a skill. It is a skill that I practice and that I have to continuously work on, but I am introverted. So bringing my authentic introverted self to work has not always worked out in my best favor, because introversion can be seen as uninterested, not a team player, or standoffish. And so I encourage people instead to be genuine. And being genuine is about being moving in good faith with your actions and being honest with your intentions, because you want to set that solid foundation of the connections you're building with people. Because again, a network is an exchange. And so you want to, again, start that foundation with honesty and transparency. So a common pitfall with being genuine is that some people believe that means being the same to everyone that you engage with, which is simply not true. And this is the image that AI generated. Has a hard time with words as well as nameplates. It thinks there's multiple. And the advice to get over that, of course, is to tailor your approach to each person. You can always be honest, but you can always adapt your approach to the audience that you're engaging with when you are building your networks. The second pillar is networking with a purpose. And networking with a purpose is about having clear strategic goals rather than casually collecting connections. It's about having goals for networking as well as aligning them with your personal and professional objectives. You want to be intentional and know who you want to connect with, why you are connecting, and how that relationship is beneficial. And this pillar reminds me of Facebook. And I don't mean meta Facebook, I mean like OG Facebook, because I was part of the lucky cohort that experienced Facebook when you needed to have a college email address. And at that point, I accepted anyone as my friend on Facebook. And to this day, I'm still deleting connections of people that I'm pretty sure I've never met and I have no idea who they are, but I just added them. But of course, I had no strategy for what I used Facebook for. And now I do. I used Facebook to stay connected with my friends and close family. And so I'm much more guarded with how I engage with that network and who I allow access to that. So be intentional about those you network with and those you allow into your network. Be purposeful and intentional. A common pitfall with networking with a purpose, though, is going with a what can I get out of it mindset. When you are only in it for yourself, people can sense those things, and it can be very detrimental to your networking ability. So this is the image that AI generated for me. Again, still the same issue with the name tags, but the what can you do for me attitude is not the way you want to generate authentic networks. And you were going to want to go in with a giving mindset, because again, a network is about an exchange. It is about a mutual giving of information, ideas. And so coming in with kind of a servant mindset can be helpful in building authentic networks. The next pillar is have emotional intelligence. And emotional intelligence is about the ability to understand, use, and manage our own emotions. Now, as well as understand and influence others' emotions. And I know it feels somewhat tone deaf to talk to a group of women professionals about having EQ, because I know based on scientific research and anecdotally as a woman that we have higher EQ than our male counterparts. So for this pillar, I would say I encourage you to leverage your EQ, because it is a valuable skill and it can be used to your advantage. And so when you are engaging with network connections, use your EQ to gather data, around your connections and make sure you're missing those nonverbal cues. So a common pitfall related to having EQ, again, is not paying attention to the nonverbal cues of people around you and being focused on your own agenda. And I think this is actually a very good representation of not focusing on emotional cues as one person is smiling and then having a great time and another person is obviously not so much enjoying the conversation. And so the advice for that is to practice active listening skills and pay attention, again, to the nonverbal cues that are going on, that you can, again, it's just gathering more data. It's collecting more data points about the people that you want to engage with. The fourth pillar is about using storytelling. I think storytelling is one of the best and easiest ways to build connections. Storytelling is engaging, it's relatable, and if done right, it's really memorable. I know for me, when I go into networking events, especially very big networking events, I will have a few stories on hand, stories that are true, but stories on hand that I like to tell people, because it's something I can remember. It's about one of my favorite topics, myself, and it's how people relate. I'm sure we've all been in situations where you've met someone and maybe you cannot remember their name, but you can absolutely remember a story that they told you. And you can probably remember that story with some semblance of detail, because for some reason, storytelling sticks. And I know that there's science behind it, but telling stories to people really makes the conversation relatable and engaging. So I think using storytelling is another great way to get people involved and build those authentic connections with people as you are getting to know them and going through this process. So a common pitfall, again, is being too self-centered, talking about only I. You want to make this, again, a conversation. It should be engaging, and you should invite other people to share in their stories and not just focus on yourself. I think this meme is a great representation of what a common pitfall is with telling stories. This is when you're supposed to be you're supposed to be networking and it turns into a TED Talk about your workout. Probably very off topic, probably very off-putting, not a good way to build authentic connections. I also find this picture interesting, again, because there are two clocks. I think this is kind of a water bottle. But again, AI has a very interesting way of generating pictures of things that people do. And again, a way to overcome those pitfalls is using shared experiences and relatability of storytelling, as well as inviting others and to share their perspectives and similar stories. And the final pillar, which is actually the most important, is sustain relationships. So if pillar 1 through 4 are the foundation of your garden, sustaining relationships is going to be the water that makes it grow. If you're going to do the work of the first 4, you definitely want to make sure that you continue to cultivate these relationships so that you can derive value from them. The way that I do this is that you have to focus on quality over quantity. We live in a time where we don't always have free time to engage with people. You don't have time to make a lot of phone calls or send a lot of messages. And so I like to make sure that the connections that I do talk to or do have time to engage with, it's quality engagement. And so I look for what I call quick wins. And quick wins are when people that are in my network people that I have, significant connections with, ask me for a favor that is well within my wheelhouse, I will absolutely say yes. If it is something that I can do that will give you great value and that takes very little work from me, I will absolutely say yes, because it's important to me that I provide value to those that are in my network. I want to build goodwill for those people. And I also know that when they win, I win. So I encourage you to look for quick wins, ways that are easy for you to sustain relationships. I know some people, one thing they encourage you to do is to celebrate everyone's success. And that is a very good thing. Even if it's just something on social media as celebrating every time someone gets promoted, every time they have good news, those words of encouragement, those little points of contact, people remember. People remember who, is by their side when they are having, positive moments in their life. And so while you cannot reach out to them all the time, you can still take time for those kind of important moments and, that fit into your dynamic and celebrate times in your lives or, again, successes to help sustain those connections that you have with people. So a common pitfall that people have, though, is only reaching out when you want something, only contacting when you're looking for a job. I know we've all had someone blindly emailing you, asking you for a job. I've never met this person. That is not the way we sustain or build a contact. That is not the way we sustain or build a network. There should be engagement ongoing. It does not have to be frequently, but the quality of the communication that you have with this connection should be positive and it should be good. It doesn't have to be frequently, but it has to be of good quality. This is the meme that the AI generated, which I think is very interesting because it's supposed to be based on Seinfeld, and I don't think it knows that because it uses Jerry Seinfeld, it uses a mouse from Tom and Jerry, which I thought was very funny. But this is the representation of this common pitfall. And again, a way that you help sustain these relationships is reach out without an agenda. Sometimes if you just reach out, again, congratulating someone on their success is reaching out without an agenda. Kudos to you. I'm happy for you. I don't want anything. I'm just saying congratulations. So engage with your network regularly when you can. And when you are engaging with them, make sure they're engagements of value. So in summary, networking is more than business cards and LinkedIn connections. Networking is a really valuable tool that you can utilize to reach your professional and personal goals, but it's important that you're intentional about who you invite into your network and how you maintain those connections. And I encourage you to take inventory because I know this audience, we are all at various levels of our career, but even today, we can all take inventory of our network, of our personal and professional networks, assess what our goals are with those networks, and see if they are actually aligned with what we are trying to achieve. You can look at these pillars and see if there are areas where you can work harder. Are there places where you can network with a purpose? I know for me, when I want to network, I like to network with a purpose. And so I like to tie my hobbies to my professional goals. I like to golf. I've joined a women's golf league, and a lot of the women in that league are on, volunteer boards. We all have that commonality. And so it's something that allows me to work on both my professional goals and personal goals. And so I get to be genuine. I'm networking with a purpose. I am using storytelling. I talk to people, engage with them. I see them on a regular basis when we have these events. And so I'm sustaining these relationships. But this kind of networking and this kind of relationship building all fits within my personal professional goals and the strategy of my networking. So build an authentic network by aligning and coming up with a strategic goal and aligning it with your personal and professional objectives. And thank you.
Well, Tameka, thank you so much for that wonderful presentation. And everyone, thank you so much for keeping all of those questions coming to our chat. I'll start with this first comment from Molly. She says, fellow introverted leader here, and what you said is spot on.
Oh, thank you.
And I'll get to our next question from Carrie, kind of a different spin. And Carrie says, how do I say no? I'm super giving of my time, but I'm currently overwhelmed with family obligations. I'll be back, but I can't help your niece who's starting journalism school next semester right now.
I recently heard advice, and I don't know if I can convey it properly, but it's a way of saying you would love to help, but you have other things that you have to balance in the interim. It's like, I'd love to, if I could do this, but if there are times when you have to say no, if you're building an authentic network and you're building a connection with someone that, again, you have rapport with, they understand. And they all know that you have life and you have other things going on. I think that's also the most important thing, is that when you're building these networks and you have these connections with people, there is that underlying relationship. They're not strangers. They know you have maybe a family or whatever you have going on. And I think having that understanding and you have that genuine relationship allows you to be able to say no without feelings being hurt. Because you give space to your friends. It's different between like a stranger and a friend saying no. I understand my friends. I know what they have going on versus a stranger. But when you're building an authentic network, they're more like a friend than a stranger. And so they're more, I think, understanding of when you have to say no. And because you give them quality, they understand that you're telling me no because you have to say no, not because you just don't want to help me. So I think as long as it's an authentic connection, saying no isn't a bad thing. You're saying no because you don't have the bandwidth, but maybe also give them an opportunity to, in the future, that you would maybe be available to help them in another space when you have capacity.
That's great advice. All right, I think we have time for one more question before we move to our panel discussion. And this is one from Izzy, and she says, how do you measure the strength of your network?
I think that's a very good question. I would measure the strength of my network by the level of engagement. I would say that a quiet network is not a very strong network. Because even when I'm not moving towards an opportunity or doing something active in my network, I'm always still engaging with it. And I think that is always strong because it's always ready for me when I need to do something. So I think that is a good measurement of the strength of your network. Is it ready to go? Are you still working on it? But it's kind of more so the volume of it. So if your network is very quiet, if you don't contact people very often, if you're not hearing from people very often, I would say you don't have a very strong network, right? If no one's reaching out to you, if you're not reaching out to anyone, those aren't strong connections. A louder network, more contacts, even if you're saying no a lot, that is still a strong network. Those are still people reaching out to you that know that you are valuable and that know that they can help you and you can help them. And so that's, I think, what I would use to measure, because I'm always, again, working in my network. I'm always talking to people, at various levels. And so I think I would use that as a measure of the strength.
Wonderful advice. Thank you for that. Well, before we get to our final panel for the day, any final words of wisdom for our viewers today?
My only words of wisdom, as someone that lived again, I say I'm from New Jersey, which, if you don't know, can kind of be very small town. And so coming here to DC is really kind of the network capital. And I love that about this area, because knowing people really can help you get into other rooms and so many other places. And if you are able to be successful without networking, imagine the power that you would hold if you really leaned into networking. And that is the entire reason why I do this and why I try to network and work on extroverting, is because I got myself far and I had people tell me, you have to get out there and talk to people. No one can want to work with you if no one knows who you are. And so if you're hesitant or if you're unsure about networking, I would advise you to lean in, even if it's uncomfortable, because it can help you take your career even further and just further your personal and professional goals.
Fantastic advice. Well, thank you for your time to present this afternoon.
All right, thank you.